is a great honor for us. So I will give you the floor straight away so that you can tell us your story and tell us about the situation in Egypt. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'll start with Arabic and then I'll move to English.
Ladies and gentlemen, members of the European Parliament, Chairperson, Madam, thank you for the invitation and thank you for the support you gave me, and thank you because you supported the campaign that my wife began. So thank you for supporting the campaign during my imprisonment, and thank you for welcoming her when she came to the Parliament 2 years ago to support my liberation campaign. Your campaign was extremely important. Your message of solidarity came to me in my cell in Egypt, and it gave me a certain degree of protection during my imprisonment. And the most important thing is that it went together with other efforts throughout the world, and all of that together led to my release. And this has allowed me to be with you here today in this session. So thank you very much for that. Dear friends, I spent more than 900 days that started with 3 days during which I was shackled. I was shackled to the wall. My hands were tied for 3 days. On the third day, I was taken to the public prosecutor, and when I came back on the last day of my forced disappearance, someone asked me, "What number are you?" And I said, "Honestly, I have no idea." And he said, "You spent the night here, so you should know your number." And I said, "I don't know my number." So he went to ask, and then he came back and they said to him, "No, this person has no number." When I went to prison and I met thousands of prisoners during my period of imprisonment, I understood that there are numbers, and that during their forced release, people are given numbers and they are kept shackled and tied to the wall, sometimes for months. And many people remain forcibly disappeared for years. This means that they are held in an unknown place, and their people, their families don't know where they are. And then there are places where from 9 o'clock at night until 4 in the morning, people are subjected to torture parties. They are beaten in attempts to extort confessions from them. During my last days in prison, I was subjected to another forced disappearance. I was blindfolded also during that time, and my hands were tied. I spent 2.5 years in prison in a room that was 23 square meters in size. There were about 18 to 30 people in this one room. We ate and slept and moved in the same place. We slept on the floor with a small blanket. The bathroom was 1.75 meters squared. It had a shower with cold water. So in the same place, we had to shower and sleep. There were insects, all types of insects. And we were never brought anything to protect us from these insects. The conditions were inhumane. Sometimes there were 32 people, and we only had about 2.5 of room to move because there were 32 of us in the same room, and we had to sleep in shifts because there wasn't enough room on the floor. I won't go into details of the humiliation that my family members were subjected to when they came to visit. Bribes were taken from them. I was also in solitary confinement, and sometimes people spent more than a week in solitary confinement because they committed a very small error. There were people who died because they just couldn't take the conditions of solitary confinement and at the dark for 2.5 weeks. My wife was only allowed to visit me one time during 2.5 years. The requests of my lawyers to visit were refused. There was only a commercial lawyer who was allowed to visit me. I wasn't allowed phone calls with my family members, even though Egyptian law says that you're allowed to communicate with your family by phone once a week. I saw so many scenes of beatings of prisoners in inhumane conditions and illegally. The legal system is politicized and not independent. Officers would say many times in prison, we are not subject to any law. We can take you, we can kill you, we can bury you, we can torture you. You are ours, and we are not subject to any law, not even the procedural law. And this is part of the terrorizing of the population. When I was taken on the 5th of July 2019, when tens of armed people stormed my house and they came in without saying who they were. My wife was forced to leave the country. They took phones, computers, books. They didn't give me a single piece of paper. And even when they released me, they did not give back my possessions that they had taken. There were 120 visits to the law 30 times during 2.5 years. I was taken to the judge, but I was only interrogated for 45 minutes, and during that interrogation I was asked about my opinion on the Egyptian revolution in 2011, who I'd voted to, and when I'd asked what's the relationship between that and my imprisonment, I was told that I was charged or was accused of being a member of a terrorist organization. I said, what's it called? And they said, well, you supported it on social media. And I said, I don't even have a social media account. And these are the accusations that are always levied against any supporters of human rights in Egypt. Ladies and gentlemen, you asked many times that the Egyptian government be held to account, but unfortunately your requests were not answered. Your desire needs to be translated into action that will change the behavior of the Egyptian government. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. And unfortunately, there is cooperation and funding to the Egyptian government, which poses the question, is there any punishment to the behavior of the government? Unfortunately, we haven't seen any yet. Egypt is a state of fear. Human rights organizations are no longer allowed to work. People are imprisoned. They're prevented from traveling. Political parties are not able to work. They're afraid that people will be arrested at the headquarters of their parties. There were hundreds that were arrested who were with me in prison just because an officer would confiscate their phone just to check if there was any comment, sometimes just supporting a dissident opinion, and based on that they would be imprisoned. This terror takes on many forms and continues. And this terror will be used against me so that I will remain silent even after my release, but I will not. People in Egypt are poor. They're subject to oppression and fraud. And if people think that that is stability, then that is not true stability. There is no stability if there's fear and poverty, if people are prevented from speaking, and if the freedom of expression is muzzled. If you want a long-term strategy and long-term economic ties, they must be built upon the respect of the freedom of expression. The whole region, not just Egypt, is boiling, and the situation cannot continue. Unfortunately, Europe pays the price of this in terms of terrorism and refugees coming in because there is no stability in the Middle East. We need to change this. We need to build a new relationship with the Middle East so that there is no longer this fear and dictatorship. I know that soon you will receive a visit from governmental delegations from Egypt. In the prison I was in for 2.5 years, there was a very small place where we could stretch our legs for an hour and a half. And next to that, there was a big field, but we were never allowed to use it. And when officials would visit, they would come and take pictures next to that field to show that human rights are upheld in Egypt. And this is a distortion of the facts. They're trying to show a picture that is not true. The emergency law has not been repealed, and there will be no real change. For months and months, we have heard that prisoners will be released. You were successful in obtaining my release and the release of some prisoners, but there are still 60,000 prisoners who are innocent, who are still in prisons, and the situation will only change if we all move together. We need to change the rules of the game. We have to force them to put an end to the crisis of human rights and the crisis that prisoners are subjected to in prisons. The governments of Europe are unable to move, and their vision of their interest is short-sighted. It is the role of you parliamentarians to take action. Thanks to your statements and your decisions and your speeches, thanks to the fact that your voices were heard, I was released, and I call upon you to continue and to work along with your colleagues in other European parliaments to take real decisions which will make the Egyptian government face its responsibility. We will be successful if we cooperate, if we put in place a strategy to continue the pressure. 60,000 prisoners in Egyptian prisons, many of them are colleagues. Each one of those has friends and a family and carries sadness. Thank you very much. And I apologize for taking up so much time.
Merci beaucoup, Ramy.
Thank you very much. We now hear from Bettina Vorlat. Oh, sorry, to Munir first of all.